Psychedelics are powerful substances, able to provoke intensely altered states of mind. While experiencing the effect of psychedelics, a person can engage in profoundly deep introspection. They can experience a cascade of epiphanies about their life and human existence, and they can see the world in a raw and intimate way, without the clouding blinders of culture, religion, and preconceived biases. One of the most powerful psychedelics is DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, and one of the most powerful methods of taking DMT is through ayahuasca, a sacred brew created by Amazonian shamans. The experience of an ayahuasca trip has been described as indescribable. There are intense visual, audio, and tactile hallucinations, as well as an uncanny sense of having your conscious awareness transported to a new place, like a new realm, or as some call it, a new dimension. When ayahuasca is consumed, the period of intoxication can last for many hours, even days. But when small amounts of raw DMT crystal are consumed, the period of intoxication only lasts for about 10 to 20 minutes. It should also be mentioned that DMT is also naturally present in the brain, in very small quantities, where it influences our dreaming. The spiritual, psychological, emotional, and behavioral effects of a profound DMT or ayahuasca experience can be remarkably beneficial, with people reporting a substantial decrease in their addictive behaviors, their anxiety, and even their existential fear of death. Despite the huge number of personal stories and anecdotes about the DMT experience, there's a disappointing lack of hard data. Legal prohibitions offer senseless yet formidable obstacles for serious research, and so not much is actually formally understood about the chemical and its effects on our minds. However, this is changing, and there is some hard data, like a recent study about how dimethyltryptamine affects our brainwaves. The study was performed by scientists at the Center for Psychedelic Research at the Imperial College London, and the paper was published in the journal Scientific Reports. In their experiments, the researchers gave 13 participants, 6 women and 7 men, intravenous doses of DMT, and measured their brain activity before, during, and after the drug took hold and had its effect. Afterwards, they also had the subjects report their subjective perception of the intensity and the events of the trip as it went along. They would have had to do this afterwards, as during the height of a DMT trip, the subject would be too affected to be able to hear, process, and respond to technical questions. What the researchers saw when they gathered all of this data was fascinating. When we're awake and alert, our brain produces what are called alpha waves, but under the influence of DMT, the alpha waves suddenly disappear, and they're replaced with short-term expression of delta and theta waves. These theta waves are typically produced when we're asleep and dreaming. Curiously, the brain activity under DMT became more chaotic and less structured, less predictable. When we sleep, our brain activity usually becomes more structured and more predictable, so this finding was rather surprising and counterintuitive. The researcher, Christopher Timmerman, was the lead author of the study, and he said, quote, "Here we saw an emergent rhythm that was present during the most intense parts of the experience, suggesting an emerging order amidst the otherwise chaotic patterns of brain activity. From the altered brainwaves and participants' reports, it's clear these people are completely immersed in their experience. It's like daydreaming, only far more vivid and immersive. It's like dreaming, but with your eyes open." Unquote. In the paper, they mentioned how delta and theta activity correlated with the peak of the DMT experience. Quote, "particularly its eyes-closed visual component." Unquote. So, in other words, when the subjects were at the peak of their DMT trip, and they closed their eyes to observe these DMT-induced hallucinations against the dark backdrop of their eyelids, that was when they expressed the most significant theta and delta wave activity. The head of the Center for Psychedelic Research, Dr. Robin Earhart Harris, described the study and the effects of DMT by saying, quote, "DMT is a particularly intriguing psychedelic. The visual vividness and depth of immersion produced by high doses of the substance seems to be on a scale above what is reported with more widely studied psychedelics such as psilocybin or magic mushrooms. It's hard to capture and communicate what it's like for people experiencing DMT, but likening it to dreaming while awake or a near-death experience is useful. Our sense is that research with DMT may yield important insights into the relationship between brain activity and consciousness, and this small study is a first step along that road." Unquote.